Imagine a quiet street, evening, when it is already dark. An elderly black woman walking home, walking alone. She moves slowly, with her bags in her hands, defenseless, hunched over. Suddenly people appear from around the corner. And no, they are not going to help her. Their eyes are full of anger, cruel intentions. They begin to surround her, and in a moment they unleash a torrent of insults and violence on her, not even realizing that in a few hours, they will have to regret what they have done. Write in the comments what your name is and from what city or country you are watching this video. You are with us, as always, and this is really important. We know that thanks to your support, your comments, every like and subscription helps us to promote our channel and find like-minded people all over the world. You are not just viewers, you are our friends, the ones who help spread important stories and change the world. Thank you for being with us. Enjoy the show. The quiet, calm evening enveloped the street in the soft light of sparse lanterns. The ordinary neighborhood, deserted and peaceful, was plunged into a light semi-darkness. The distant sound of a police car siren, barely audible in the night, further emphasized the serenity and silence. The autumn wind barely moves the dry leaves, scattering them across the sidewalk. No movement, not a single passerby, as if the whole world had stopped, allowing this corner of the city to stand still for a moment. An elderly woman walks leisurely along the sidewalk, confidently holding her bag and leaning lightly on her cane. Her face is peaceful, wearing a calm smile, the serenity and wisdom of her years. She returns home, as if enjoying every minute of this quiet evening. It seems to her that everything around her is calm and safe, and that nothing can disturb her journey home. But suddenly, as if the night itself is signaling an alarm, a strange rustling sound is heard in the distance. At first, the woman doesn't pay much attention to it, writing it off as wind, but a moment later she feels someone's eyes on her. Slowly looking around, she notices movement in the shadows a little farther down the street. The woman's heart sinks for a second, but she immediately calms herself, convincing herself that it's just her imagination playing out on the deserted street. She walks on, but inside she already feels a slight uneasiness. Shadows seem to move behind her, disappearing and reappearing by the streetlights. The strange feeling of being watched intensifies. The woman tries to remain calm, gripping her cane a little tighter, trying to move more confidently, but every step she takes seems to echo in this silence, as if someone invisible is walking beside her. The light of the street lamps, barely illuminating the street, begins to seem insufficiently bright to her. For a moment, turning her head, she sees shadows slowly approaching. The lantern at the next intersection, as if mocking her, suddenly begins to flicker, creating an eerie and disturbing contrast. The feeling of safety fades, leaving only a chill on her soul and an incomprehensible but unrelenting anxiety. The woman quickens her step, driven by an intuitive fear. Though she doesn't want to look back, something tells her it's not just fear. It's as if someone or something is actually following her, keeping pace. This evening, which started out so calmly, suddenly becomes alien and frightening. As she approaches the crossroads, the sense of impending danger becomes almost unbearable. A soft rustle behind her sounds closer and closer, as if someone is trying to sneak up unnoticed. Her heart pounds faster, but she forces herself not to look back, trying to remain dignified and calm. She hopes it's just an illusion, that no one is actually following her, but it's hardly an illusion. The woman has barely reached the next intersection, when shadows begin to emerge from the dark alley to the left. At first, they are only barely visible silhouettes, but then the outlines of several people emerge from that darkness. It's a group of strangers, 5 or 6 men, all of whom seem young, strong, and dangerous. Their faces are almost invisible, but even in the dim light of the lanterns, you can make out hard features and evil grins. They stand nearby, as if lingering casually against the wall, but when they notice the elderly woman, their conversations subside and their gazes focus on her. There is not a hint of compassion or respect in their gazes, only cold interest and underlying aggression. One of them, a tall guy in a dark hooded sweatshirt, leans toward the others and says something quietly, never taking his eyes off his victim. The others listen to him, looking at each other and nodding, and there's something predatory in their smiles, as if they're aiming for their prey. The woman takes a step forward, trying to hold herself steady, but still seems to realize that she is in danger. She feels vulnerable, alone, as if enveloped in this dark, dense atmosphere of night. A cold fear grips her body, as if warning her that these people are not to be trusted, that they carry something sinister with them. The strangers begin to move slowly toward her, stepping step by step out of the shadows of the alley. One of them, a guy with short hair and a rough, hard face, stares intently at the woman, not hesitating to scrutinize her, as if studying his prey. He enjoys the situation and feels superior to the woman, who is just a frail elderly woman, unarmed and alone. "Hey, lost something, Grandma?" One of them tosses her the phrase with a sneer, to which the others react with mocking chuckles and light laughter. But there's nothing funny about their laughter. It sounds like anticipation, like a beast before it leaps at its prey. Their glances become even more insolent, as if they already feel like winners in this grim game that they themselves have designed. The woman involuntarily freezes, realizing that there is no turning back. There is no doubt anymore these people are not just random passers-by. They will not go away, will not leave her alone. Surrounding the woman in a semicircle, they glance at each other, as if reading each other's thoughts and encouraging their own cruelty. The group approaches slowly and steadily, encircling the woman as if tightening a ring around their victim. Each step echoes in the silence, heightening the tension. Their gazes are full of cruelty and superiority, looking at her as if she were something insignificant and humiliating. There is a cold malice in their eyes, as if they've been waiting for an opportunity to unleash their hatred on someone, defenseless and unable to fight back. One of them, a guy with a smirk on his face, speaks loudly so everyone can hear him. "Are you lost, old witch? You're not taking up space here. You're ruining the air." His words are filled with contempt, and he enjoys every moment of it, seeing the woman start to worry as she realizes she has nowhere to run. "Look at her, walking around like she's welcome here." The other throws in, a smirk curving his lips. His tone is full of sarcasm, and he looks at the woman with such disgust, as if she were not a person but an object to be done with. He steps closer, deliberately stepping in her way so she can't go any further. "Old woman, people like you shouldn't be here. You disgrace this town with your appearance," exclaims the third, loudly and mockingly, so that even those who have nothing to do can hear. He takes a step forward and leans toward her, showing his contempt and superiority. The others pick up on it, each throwing around even more derogatory words, as if trying to show which of them could hurt her more. "Get out of here while you're still in one piece," one of them adds with a clear threat in his voice. "No one's waiting for you here. Understand?" His voice becomes harsher, more threatening, as if he's warning her that it will be worse if she doesn't leave immediately. But they don't want her to leave. They revel in her helplessness, her vulnerability. Each of them seeks to wound her, not just with words, but with the fear that builds in her eyes. Seeing the woman try to answer something, they laugh louder and more defiantly, not letting her get a word in edgewise. They want her to feel helpless and insignificant. "Hey, old girl, do you even realize what they're about to do to you?" throws one of them, smirking. "And nobody's going to help you. Nobody wants you here." The others laugh, and one of them steps forward and pushes her, making her stagger. He likes her consternation, likes seeing her lose herself in fear. There is no mercy or pity in their words or looks, only burning hatred and a desire to break. The woman clutches her cane tighter, trying not to panic, but with every step they take, with every word they say, she becomes more and more afraid. She realizes that these people are not just threatening, they are really ready to do something terrible. The woman, feeling the unrelenting chill of fear, takes a timid step back, trying to get away from this environment, but she barely makes an attempt to retreat when one of her attackers blocks her path. Standing directly in front of her, his eyes glitter with malice and contempt, and a menacing smirk plays on his lips. "Where are you going, Grandma?" His voice is low, threatening. The other strangers immediately support him, surrounding the woman tighter, as if building a living wall from which she cannot escape. She looks around, but wherever she turns, she's met by hostile, angry faces, full of hatred and contempt. "Since when are people like you even allowed to walk here?" the hooded guy says mockingly, stepping closer to her. He glares at her, not hiding his disgust, as if she's violating his personal space. "Do you even know that you don't belong here at all? You think you're just going to walk around here like nothing happened?" The woman makes another uncertain attempt to back away, but someone abruptly grabs her shoulder, stopping her movement. She turns around and sees the hard, icy expression on the face of another attacker. His fingers squeeze her shoulder, and she feels how strong his grip is. This man isn't going to let her just walk away. What? You think you can walk past us like this and pretend you're okay with everything here? He says threateningly, leaning slightly toward her so that she feels the weight of his words. The others chuckle, encouraging him and fueling his anger. You think you're special, that you're allowed to walk around here like you're welcome here, throws another voice from the crowd, full of hate. He takes a step closer and leans in close to her face, so that the woman can feel his heavy breathing. People like you should know their place, and that place is not here. Her hands shake and she grips her cane tighter, feeling the fear growing inside her. She tries to say something again, but her voice falters, and her words are drowned in the deafening laughter and cheers of the crowd. They don't want to listen to her, don't give her the slightest chance to justify herself or explain herself. Their faces are full of gloating and anticipation. It is as if they find pleasure in seeing her helpless and frightened. Don't try to get away, shouts one of them, blocking her path again. You pay for showing up here. He reaches out his hand as if ready to grab her and do something terrible. The others attack with more accusations, as if she's already guilty before them for all the trouble they can make up. Every word they say, every step they take fills the woman with despair. It becomes clear to her that there is no way out, that these people have come to hurt her no matter what she does. In this silent, dark environment, with each passing moment, fear fills her soul, making her realize the hopelessness of the situation. One of the attackers, a tall, rough-looking guy with a cold expression, shoves the woman forward, as if playing with her like a helpless puppet. She doesn't expect the blow and, losing her balance, barely manages to stay on her feet. Her bag slips out of her hands, falls to the sidewalk, and all her belongings some change. An old wallet, a small handkerchief are scattered on the ground, as a symbol of her helplessness. Instead of helping or at least stopping, a crowd only laughs, watching with mock anger. Their laughter is loud, sharp, like a cold blow, and every sound of it stabs into her soul, making her realize how alone and defenseless she is in front of them. Look, it's all falling apart on you, just like yourself, shouts one of them, coming closer and mercilessly kicking the purse with his foot so that it flies off to the curb. It gives him pleasure to see her reaching for her belongings, trying to pick up at least a little of what's left, but he doesn't think about letting her do that. Another attacker leans over to her and, smirking, speaks so that only she can hear him, a wicked sneer in his voice. How does it feel to know that no one can help you? Now you're alone, all alone here, and all you have to do is endure? His words pierce her like a knife. She feels cold and shivery, and she's scared, really scared, because he's right, there's no one around but them. When the woman tries to stand up and pick up her bag so that she won't be left with nothing at all, one of them pushes her again, harder, this time forcing her to her knees. She falls, and the pain of the impact reverberates through her elderly body. The woman feels the hot pain spilling over her knees, but she perseveres, reaching for her belongings, hoping to retain some vestige of dignity, if only for a moment. But it's not enough for them. They want to break her completely, to see her spirit extinguished right before their eyes. One of them, smirking, puts his foot on her cane, pinning her to the ground so she can't get up. The woman looks helplessly at her hands, trembling with fear and humiliation, realizing she cannot fight their cruelty. Old one, are you really still trying to resist? Do you think you can make a difference? One of them leans toward her, and his voice is like cold poison. The others laugh, cheering every word as if it's the funniest thing they've ever heard. Their laughter resonates in the darkness of the street, filling it with an eerie, sickening atmosphere. They stand around her, gloatingly enjoying her misery, their faces contorted with hatred and superiority. The woman realizes that they are not going to stop, that this is a game for them, and that they can continue until she can't stand it anymore. She tries to gather her strength, but feels that every moment takes away her last hope and leaves only silent fear. The crowd surrounding the woman begins to shout hurtful, hateful words. Their voices grow louder, filled with outright contempt and cruelty. Each of them seems to be trying to outshout the other, with each shout intensifying the insults that pierce into the old woman's soul like sharp needles. What? You come here to show everyone who you are, shouts one of them, looking at her with an expression of gloating satisfaction. You think we've been waiting here for you? You're nothing and nobody here. His voice sounds rough and angry, as if he wants to not just hurt, but to hit as hard as possible. The other attacker, grinning, comes closer and hurls another insult. Have you even seen yourself in the mirror? You don't even deserve to walk down this street. His words are accompanied by a mocking laughter, and he looks at her as if she were not a person but something dirty, not worthy of attention or sympathy. We don't want people like you in our neighborhood. You don't belong here, shouts another one, adding more hurtful words, openly imbued with racist hatred. He says these words with a special pressure, as if he is trying to beat the last of her strength out of her and make her feel the full weight of their contempt. The woman looks at these men, each one expressing open contempt and hatred. She feels the words of these strangers penetrate her, breaking down her inner resistance, and realizes that they don't just hate, they want to destroy her dignity, make her feel insignificant. Someone else among them, not holding back their anger, spits in her direction, as if to emphasize that to them, she doesn't deserve even minimal respect. The gesture humiliates her even more, but she realizes that none of them are going to stop. You don't even realize where you are, do you? Says one of them, leaning over to her and practically whispering, but in a way that everyone can hear. There's no one here to protect you, no one to stop us. You're completely helpless in front of us, and you're going to have to accept that. The woman feels a cold wave roll through her body. These people want to break her not only physically, but also morally, to destroy any sense of self-worth. They savor every word, every gesture of fear and despair she makes. One of the attackers, not content with the insults he had already uttered, steps forward sharply and elbows the woman in the shoulder. She, not expecting such a blow, stumbles and almost falls, but tries to hold on, clutching her cane as her only support. Her eyes are filled with fear, but there is also a hardness in them, the hardness of someone who has lived a long life and seen a lot. But the crowd doesn't see it, or perhaps they don't want to. They see only the victim before them, helpless and alone, to be mocked without fear. The next blow, harder and colder, comes from a young man with hard features. He hits the woman in the side, and she loses her balance again, staggers, but this time falls to her knees. Her cane rolls on the sidewalk, flying off to the side, and now she is deprived of even this feeble chance for support. She tries to cover herself by raising her arms, but her attackers aren't going to stop. They see her weakness, her helplessness, and it's as if it encourages them to commit further acts of brutality. What? Not as strong as you seemed anymore, one of them throws, and there is a gloating pleasure in his voice. With those words, he strikes her with his foot, causing the woman to crouch in pain. She crouches down and tries to defend herself, covering her face with her hands, but they are only amused. Someone in the crowd laughs again, throwing mocking words in her direction, but now the words don't mean much, their actions speak louder. One of her attackers, a guy with a tattoo on his neck, comes closer to her with a predatory grin and kicks her in the back without restraint. The woman falls face down on the cold asphalt, and every breath she takes echoes with pain in her ribs. It seems to her that the blows come from everywhere, each new push, each blow like a wave of pain that has no end. She hears their laughter, their voices full of contempt and pleasure at her suffering. Just like that, thought you could walk around here like the rest of us, shouts one of them, lifting her foot and stepping on her arm, which unsuccessfully tries to find some sort of defense. She cries out in pain, but all she hears in response are taunts and gloating comments. The crowd surrounds her so tightly that she can no longer see any way out, no glimmer of hope. She feels their power, their anger, each blow like a new jolt that takes away her last strength. These people savor every moment, without regard for the fact that they have a defenseless person in front of them. They see in her only an object for their hatred and cruelty, and they seem to take sincere pleasure in it. The woman tries to raise her head, but is again hit hard in the face. Her face is in sharp pain, and a warm trickle of blood runs down her cheek, slowly trickling down her chin and dripping to the ground. Her feeble attempts to defend herself only provoke another outburst of rage and ridicule. Look at her, she thinks she can resist, shouts someone from the crowd, and this voice dissolves into a general laughter of terrifying joy. The woman gathers her last strength and tries to pull herself up, grasping the pavement with trembling hands. But as soon as her shoulders are off the ground, someone roughly pushes her back down. Her hands slip, and she falls back onto the cold, hard sidewalk. Pain shoots through her body, but the strongest thing she feels is fear of this ruthless mob, of their hatred, of the fact that they're not going to stop. Through the pain, struggling to raise her head. She utters in a quiet, trembling voice, "Please, leave me alone. I have done no harm to anyone." But her words dissolve into thin air, as if no one could hear them. As soon as her weak voice fades, the crowd begins to laugh, a deafening, gloating laughter that fills the night street with coldness and despair. They love to see her broken, helpless, and her every plea only fuels their cruelty. "Are you serious? You think your cheers are going to stop us?" utters one of them, leaning in so close to her that she can't feel his hot, contemptuous breath. "No one wants you here. Remember that." His words sound like a sentence, like something final, robbing her of even the faintest hope of salvation. She tries to get up again, trying to find something to hold on to, but another blow to her side knocks her to the ground again. Exhausted, she can barely breathe, feeling the darkness around her shrinking like a ring, leaving her with less and less chance of escape. The woman utters out of her last strength, "Please, just go. Please, please." Her voice grows quieter, as if extinguished along with her hope, but instead of pity or compassion, she hears only more evil taunts. "Do you really think anyone will spare you?" utters one of them, stepping closer and leaning in, so that his eyes are at the level of her devastated gaze. "You're a nobody here, and it's time you realize that." They surround her, their shadows looming like a sinister, inexorable circle from which she cannot escape. She feels their hatred, almost physically. Every step they take, every glance, is a blow to her spirit, to the last thread she still holds on to. Barely does she raise her hands again, trying to close herself off. They laugh and push her away, with ease, showing how helpless she is before their power and cruelty. The night seems endless, full of horror, hopelessness, and dread, because she realizes that these men will not stop. Her pleas, her attempts to defend herself, mean nothing to them. They see her only as a target for their anger and contempt, and the realization grips her heart with a chilling horror. When the crowd has finally had enough of their disgusting entertainment, one of the attackers, with a disgruntled smirk on his lips, steps aside, as if he has lost all interest in the woman. The others, seeing that the show is over, exchange glances and grin. Satisfied with their work, they are no longer shouting or laughing loudly. Their anger, their hatred, has spilled out in full, leaving behind only cold satisfaction. One of them casts one last mocking glance at the woman lying there and, with the words, "That's enough, let's get out of here," turns away. The others join in, one by one, and their footsteps, which at first sound heavy and sure, gradually dissolve into the silence of the night, leaving her lying alone on the cold ground. The woman is left alone, broken, shattered, with her body throbbing with pain. She can barely breathe, and a strangled moan escapes her lips. But there is no one around to hear her or come to her aid. The silence of the street is once again as absolute as it was at the beginning of that terrible night, but now only her ragged breathing and faint attempts to move can be heard. The attackers walk away, leaving her on the sidewalk without looking back. They do not think about the consequences, do not feel the slightest remorse for them. It was just an amusement, a horrible and soulless game, which none of them thinks about now. None of them suspects that their cruel deed will not be forgotten. That this night, which seemed to them just a casual fun, will soon turn against them. The woman, gathering the last crumbs of strength, tries to get up, but the pain is too great. She remains lying on the cold asphalt, looking up at the dark sky, as if trying to find there the answer to the question why she had to endure all this. She does not know what lies ahead for these people, but somewhere in the back of her mind, she feels that their deed will not go unanswered. The chilly silence of the night seems to stiffen the body of the woman left lying on the cold ground. Her consciousness falls into darkness, and then returns to the painful reality. The painful blows echo in her entire body, especially in her arms and legs, but she knows she needs to get up. She needs to ask for help. Overcoming her weakness, she reaches for her old cell phone in her coat pocket. Every gesture resonates with excruciating pain, but she doesn't stop, knowing that this is her only chance. Finally, she manages to fumble for the phone with her trembling hand, and with an incredible effort, she reaches for it, but her fingers barely obey. Sliding across the cold screen, she grips the phone tighter, so she doesn't drop it, and slowly scrolls through her contacts list. She searches for only one name, the name of her son, the only person who can help her and who she knows she can call at this moment. Her fingers shake as she finally finds his number and presses the call button. The phone begins to buzz, and each wait for a response sounds like an eternity to her. Her head spins. The sounds seem muffled, but she desperately hopes that he'll answer, that he'll hear her. Finally, after a few beeps, her son's voice comes through the speaker. It sounds sleepy, anxious, but after her first confused word, it is clear that something has happened to her. She tries to explain, speaking softly, struggling, feeling her voice breaking. Her words echo, weak, almost incoherent phrases, but he understands her condition. Her trembling voice conveys everything he needs to: the pain, the fear, and the horror she has just experienced. His son is silent for a moment, and she can hear his breathing getting heavier, as if he's trying to suppress a burst of anger. She knows he's already made up his mind. Without asking a single unnecessary question, he promises he will come immediately, and his voice fills her with renewed strength. She feels that now she is not alone, that someone will really come and help her, protect her, and give her support. After the call ends, the woman lets go of the phone, feeling her strength leave her again, but now her heart is warmer. Her son is on his way. He is on his way to her, and she knows he will not let this cruelty go unanswered. She lets herself fall back into a half-sleep, knowing that salvation is near. The son pulls up to the location indicated in his mother's short, confused call. He had barely had time to throw on his jacket when he rushed out of the house, still not fully aware of what had happened, but the anxiety that had been building in his chest during the call was now growing with every second, with every new step as he got out of the car and looked around the deserted street for his mother. And then he sees her lying on the cold asphalt, her figure barely visible in the dim light of the street lamp. His heart clenches, and his fear for his mother turns into a wave of unbearable pain and anger. He rushes to her, kneeling down beside her and gently lifting her head. He sees the bruises, the abrasions, the blood caked on her face, and the sight is chillingly horrifying. But when he looks into her eyes full of pain and despair, everything inside him is filled with a fierce determination. He helps her up, holding her by the shoulders, and his voice, though broken, sounds soft as he asks if she can breathe, if there are any serious injuries. He can see that her body is trembling, as if she can't recover from the horror she's experienced. She tries to explain what happened, but her voice is weak and shaky, and his son realizes that she has suffered unspeakable cruelty and humiliation. Gathering her strength, her mother says she was attacked and tries to tell him about the mob that surrounded her, how they beat and humiliated her, left her alone on the cold ground with no thought of the consequences. Her weak words pierce him, each one like a red-hot thorn in his heart. Cold determination flashes in his eyes, and he knows one thing: those who did this to her will not go unpunished. He squeezes his mother's hand, promising her that they will pay for every second of her pain, for every scar left on her body and soul. She sees the strength in his eyes, and it calms her. Her son is her only protector and support, and now that he's there for her, she doesn't have to say anything to make him understand what needs to be done. After lifting his mother to her feet and placing her in the car, he gently closes the door and looks around the empty street. His heart blazes with anger, cold and focused. He had already made his decision. He would find those who had hurt his mother and make them feel at least a fraction of the fear and despair she had felt. The son returns home, still shaken, but his anger, cold and focused, is now directed in one direction. He knows he will not let these people go unpunished. He sits down at his desk, picks up his phone, and starts calling friends and acquaintances, those who know the neighborhood well and those who understand how to track down those hiding in the shadows. He doesn't go into detail about what happened, but there's a steely note in his voice that makes everyone realize that this is a case that needs the utmost attention. He describes in detail those his mother has had time to notice: their clothing, their height, even the rough details she has memorized. He makes notes, one after another, refining the details, call after call. He doesn't have to search long. Friends and acquaintances respond quickly, and soon he gets his first important piece of information. Someone saw a similar group of guys. Someone heard that they often gathered in an abandoned building nearby, and rumors about their behavior, full of aggression and cruelty, begin to be confirmed. Each new report of them spurs his resolve. He studies the route, figuring out how to proceed, and assessing what he might need. With each passing minute, he sinks deeper into the matter, and his resolve takes on an almost relentless, grim quality. He knows this meeting is going to be tough. He has no doubt that these men deserve a harsh response, and he is prepared to make sure they remember this lesson for the rest of their lives. His preparation becomes impeccable. He plans how and when to approach them, strategizes, thinks out every move so that those who raised a hand against his mother will feel his full fury and power. The son, using the information he has obtained, methodically tracks down each of those who dare to raise a hand against his mother. He manages to find out their names, the places where they usually gather, and even the usual routes they take around the neighborhood. With the help of friends, acquaintances, and old connections, he builds a detailed picture of their daily lives, like a hunter stalking his prey. But for him, it's not just about revenge, it's about restoring justice. His goal is to confront each of the attackers one by one. He realizes that this is the only way to make them feel real responsibility for what they have done, to show them that their cowardly, cruel behavior will now have consequences. He does not rush and does not act in haste. Each meeting, each conversation is prepared down to the smallest detail, so that none of them escapes a face-to-face conversation. He finds the first one in the evening near a cafe, where he often spends time with friends. The son approaches calmly, but a cold fire burns in his eyes, and when the attacker meets his gaze, he realizes this is not a chance encounter. At first, the guy tries to smirk, but when he sees the determination in his son's eyes, his self-confidence is replaced by confusion and fear. The son leaves him no chance for excuses. His words sound harsh, each one a reminder of the pain and humiliation his mother experienced. The attacker first tries to justify himself, then apologizes, but the son is adamant. He must understand that he will never get away with this. He encounters the next one from the group in the gym. The boy, seeing him, tries to leave, but his son intercepts him, looking him hard and confidently in the eyes, and he realizes that it is useless to run. The son calmly but firmly reminds him of every humiliation he and his friends heaped on a defenseless woman, his mother. The boy starts to get nervous and averts his gaze, but the son demands that he'll look him in the eye. At this point, fear and regret begin to show on the attacker's face. He can't hide his anxiety, and the son sees it. He knows that this man will not forget the lesson he has taught. The son finds the last two together. They have already heard that they are being hunted and try to escape, but do not manage to get far enough away. The son catches up with them, and seeing him, they immediately lose courage, begin to justify themselves, saying that it was a mistake. They didn't know what they were doing, but their words mean nothing to him. He demands that they realize that every action they take has consequences, and now they will remember it for the rest of their lives. Each of the attackers feels fear and regret, seeing in his son's eyes the strength and determination that cannot be broken. He leaves them no choice only to realize their guilt, to feel their responsibility for every blow, every humiliation they inflicted on his mother. Now they are not just scared, they realize that they will have to answer for their actions. That their actions, no matter how hard they try to forget them, will follow them and never leave them alone. The story ends not only with a just punishment, but also with a profound lesson for those who chose to allow themselves to be cruel, hiding in the crowd and believing that they could hide their own vices behind it. The attackers, initially confident of their impunity, face the fact that evil always returns to those who do it. Their act, which they thought was just a moment's fun, turned out to have serious consequences. They realized that life does not forgive senseless cruelty. Each of them now knows that the suffering they inflicted on a defenseless woman will leave a mark not only on her, but also on themselves. They are doomed to remember the moments when their cruel words and actions turned against them. They are now haunted by the realization that no deed is without a trace. Evil will always find its way back to those who caused it, no matter how hard a person tries to avoid paying the price. This story reminds everyone that even the weakest, most defenseless people have the right to be protected and respected, and that every cruelty, every humiliation turns against the perpetrators. The woman's son defended her honor and peace, but the attackers paid with their fear and guilt, a burden they will carry throughout their lives. This story warns each of us: malice, cruelty, and hatred will never go unanswered. Friends, this story is a reminder that justice always prevails and that evil, even the most petty and cruel, sooner or later returns to the one who commits it. Write in the comments what you think about this story. Have there been times in your life when you or your loved ones have had to face injustice and racism? How did you deal with it? Each of you is incredibly important to us. We appreciate you sharing your thoughts and stories. Your comments help build our community, where support and understanding means so much. If you liked this video, don't forget to put a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new stories. We wish you all kindness, justice, and, of course, a good day.